making $100,000 an hour? I can't make this up. This is exactly how Mel Robbins says it.
Because I make $100,000 to stand on a stage and talk for an hour.
Now, in today's video, we're going to talk about how exactly Mel Robbins makes $100,000 an hour and how she was able to build up a personal brand and expertise, become one of the top motivational and personal development speakers in the world. And I know for sure there's so many great lessons in today's video for everyone who has a goal of creating an online business, who has a goal of becoming a speaker, whatever your goal is of creating revenue, online income, and impact to people, and really being a person of service. This video is for you. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I sat back and I thought to myself, wow, what is the most I've ever been paid hourly by someone to do something? And I really don't know. I think it's around $500, $600 an hour that somebody paid me for some type of coaching call. I can't remember honestly, but let me know in the comments your ideal monetary value, meaning how much would you like to get paid per hour? Let me know. One day I'd love to make $1,000 an hour. There's another YouTuber and real estate genius that I know about. I don't know if you guys have seen Ryan Pineda's YouTube channel, but he charges $3,000 an hour for consulting. It's pretty inspiring and amazing. So go ahead and comment what you'd like to make per hour one day. And without further ado, let's get into this video. Now, so let's go over a little bit of Mel Robbins' story because I think it's fascinating. I think it is a story of hitting a major rock bottom and having the biggest comeback ever. And it's super inspiring to me. I remember the first time I heard her story, I couldn't stop thinking about it for days. So basically her story goes that in the year 20, not even 20. So in the year 2008, we all know, those of us who were in the United States at 2008, at the time there was this huge recession. The housing market just went straight under the ground. It was extremely hard for people to get jobs. Financially, so many people were struggling. And I remember it being very scary because at the time I was in college and only like 20% of my graduating class and we were civil engineers, so we supposedly entered into an industry with stable work. Only 20% of us who graduated actually had a job, which is super sad because normally it's around 90%. Anyway, going back to Mel Robbins, this was very common too. She says how her husband's restaurant business completely failed, and so many businesses at that time were, closing, unfortunately, and shutting down. It was really sad. She was actually laid off from her job. She was 41 years old at the time and had 3 kids under the age of 10. And so she claims all the time that she was super bitchy to her husband. She had a big drinking problem. So, all these things were happening to her and her family all at once. And she literally didn't know how to handle it because at the end of the day, her and her family had racked up a bill of $1 million debt. $1 million debt. So imagine being laid off, the restaurant business goes down, having a household and a mortgage and kids to support, and boom, $1 million debt. It's the recession and you don't have a job. That's tough. And so here's an aspect of her story that she talks about, which I think is fascinating, is that back during that time, she says that she knew exactly what she needed to do. A lot of us actually know exactly what we need to do to move forward, but she just couldn't figure out how to make herself do what she needed to do. Like day by day would go by and she'd be like, okay, yes, I'm still drinking, still arguing with my husband, still super depressed, still can't get over the fact of what's going on in my circumstances right now. So day after day, nothing would happen. And she would just remain the same old Mel that she claimed to be. And she would just let fear and anxiety consume her day by day, which is something that a lot of us go through, and we're paralyzed by fear and the unknown and the fear of not knowing what's gonna happen. And so then her story goes on to where finally one day she started to do the 5-second rule, where basically she was sitting down one day talking or watching this show about rocket launching, and she thought, oh my God, why didn't I think of this before? And every day in the morning, I'm finally gonna get my ass up, go to work, and make some changes. So she would count down from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's called the 5-4-second rule. And then she would just propel herself out of bed. And that was kind of her first claim to fame, because back in the day, I think around 2010, I don't know that for sure, but she had a TED Talk. So this was her very first presentation speaking, and she hated it. She was, very, very, very nervous on stage. She said like her neck started to get a bunch of hives because she was so nervous and freaking out. And she was like, I'm never doing that again. That was the worst experience of my life. And so at the time, YouTube wasn't even popular back then, but TED Talk a year later posted that same talk about the 5-second rule on YouTube, and a year later goes by and people start to watch it, and then people start to tell Mel like, hey, I loved your talk. And she was confused, like, okay, well, were you at the TED Talk show? Because I don't know how else you would have seen it. So turns out that TED Talk just started to go viral, and she started to get more and more views. So that kind of like propelled her speaking career. But she would speak after that for free. She would speak at different events. She would speak at different groups. She would speak at different masterminds. And again, she was doing all of this for free because in her mind, she thought that back then only pure celebrities were gonna get paid for speaking in front of audiences. She didn't even know that it was an option until one day she says that a woman approached her, a fellow speaker at an event that she was speaking at, and she said, hey, by the way, Mel, have you received your check yet? And Mel's like, what do you mean check? And she's like, check for what? For speaking. And so it turns out that, that event unfortunately paid other speakers but didn't pay Mel. And that's when she's like, oh, really? Well, I'm gonna show them, because that's messed up. And so she explains that, it really hurt her, or kind of hit her hard, and made her realize, like, you know what? This could be a career, because at that same time, she still had major liens on her house. They were still like in a mountain of debt, and they still financially were suffering. And so this is what propelled her to say, you know what? I need to take this speaking career seriously, start to really monetize it and know my worth. Because as we'll touch on later, she had major imposter syndrome, and she kept thinking to herself like, oh, I'm not even worth getting paid, or oh my gosh, like the thought of her making, $5,000, $10,000 was like, oh my gosh, like I don't even know if I'm worth that. So that's what she was struggling with in the beginning. And little by little, she did start to charge for talking at these events. And eventually she started to get so confident that when people would ask her like, hey Mel, could you speak at our event that we have going on? We'd love for you to be one of the speakers. She would say, hey, well, how much is your budget? And then they would give her a number, and then she would wait. And then she's like, well, you know what? Normally I'm double. I'm like, oh, she's double. I'm gonna take that line. I'm gonna take that line, Mel, because that was dope to hear her say that. And so she started to more and more get more confident about how much she was worth and how much value she could bring to a live audience. So now I'd like to talk about the how. And from my professional observations, just kidding, they're just normal observations, but this is what I've concluded in studying Mel's story for quite some time and following her and constantly listening to her podcast and her YouTube videos on how she's able to charge $100,000 per hour for talking on stage and doing what she's best at. And so that first thing that I think has really helped her from the beginning is her rock bottom. I strongly believe that the entrepreneurs who hit rock bottom the hardest are the ones that have the biggest comeback and that have the biggest drive and are able to create the biggest results. There's been so many inspiring entrepreneurial stories of people starting with absolutely nothing, people starting homeless, people starting from circumstances that I personally can't even imagine. Like, for example, Oprah, her story of growing up dirt poor, being molested, like all of these things that statistically were all pointed at her to fail and to not be one of the richest women in the world right now. And so Mel had a very tough rock bottom. And I look at her rock bottom and I think, wow, like that was kind of harder than my rock bottom, right? Because I could relate to debt. I was, $80,000 plus in debt and no income, savings basically gone. And it was just me. I didn't have kids. I didn't have a husband. There was no restaurant business involved. But it's like once you experience debt, it's like $100K in debt, $1 million in debt. It's it's scary. That situation financially is extremely, extremely scary. And so I often look at the trend of when there's people that want to start an online business or whatever kind of business, they want to start investing in real estate or they want to start this. A big reason why people don't start is because they're comfortable. They're maybe already making 6 figures in a 9-to-5 job. They have a blanket of comfort that's stopping them from really taking that leap and going into an unknown place that's dangerous. And that's fine and all, but it's really these do or die circumstances where I've realized that, wow, where I've noticed and concluded that, wow, these entrepreneurs that are really at the top 1%, and they're really crushing it and getting results in their business, they had it the hardest in the beginning. They had some serious rock bottoms. And for some of them, personally, I couldn't even imagine going through them. And Mel says something really important in one of her interviews, and that's this. It's that it's always within us as human beings to keep going and to persevere. Like when we're babies, when we're 1 year old and learning how to walk, we fall down 10 times a day, 15 times a day. And we want to get back up. We want to get back up and start walking again. And so if we choose to not move forward, and if life circumstances are harsh and are telling us, no, 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 you can't do this. And if you or I decide to quit, we are the ones that ultimately decided no. No one else, no other circumstance in life. That's essentially our responsibility to keep on going. And that's why entrepreneurial land is so tough day to day, month by month, because at least for me, it almost feels like I get knocked down all the time. I feel like 80% of the time, it's always learning, failing, like, oh crap, that didn't work, figuring things out. But then that 20% gets so much more refined and is able to help like the income producing things in my business go way forward and accelerate much more. I hope that's making sense. And so here's another major factor that I think led to Mel Robbins' success, and that is vulnerability. I believe that vulnerability 100% got her to where she is, because when you're vulnerable, it opens up that space for connection with people, for connection with your audience, and you're automatically relatable when you are real about your journey and really where you are in your life. You're not accepting it. This also means really great things about self-acceptance. It's like, hey, I'm here. I'm not over there. Like, she knew where she was when she was still in major debt and during that time, but she was being vulnerable about what was helping her get through that time, which was the 5-second rule. And I think to myself that some of my favorite creators on YouTube are those creators who are real, who talk about their struggles, who are real about what's happening in their journey. And because in this land of social media, it's very hard and it's easy to get things misconstrued about other people's lives and think that whatever they're portraying on social media is perfect. But it's like, let me know behind the curtains of what's really going on. Because all the time, month by month, even week by week, we all face new crazy challenges that are popping up in our lives. And it's great to just be vulnerable about it and to not always feel that we have to show off these wild accomplishments and show that things are going in a straight, perfect line and increasing, when in reality, it's like brr, 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 down, 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 up a little bit, more down. And then it's like, the path to success. You've seen that graph where it's like, path to success looks like this and not like this. So I think the next factor that highly contributes to her making $100K an hour, which is still crazy to say out loud and inspiring, but it is no shadow of a doubt her work ethic. Her work ethic is like no other. She says that, hey, I'm not the most talented person in the room, but you can bet that I'm gonna work my ass off. And she says, you know what? I am going to outwork everyone. And so she talks about what makes her such a pleasure to work with and why she keeps getting called back to events again and again. And it's because she does the little things that nobody else wants to do. Okay? She puts in those hours of work that no other speaker cares to do. So for example, she talks about how when she arrives in a new city, she automatically texts the whole coordinator team and the event planner to say, hey, I arrived. She offers to bring them coffee. She always greets the staff with a smile, always introduces herself. She never assumes that anyone knows her name. So she just makes it a very personable and likable experience for everybody that's involved in the production of this event. And she says like, hey, I take care of people behind the scenes, and no other speaker wants to do that. I mean, it's all about their ego, and it's all about them being focused, their heads down. They don't really want to talk to anyone. All they care about is delivering a good speech. And she said, you know what, that's assumed and automatic that you're going to deliver a good speech. Why don't you try doing other things and, you know, making yourself more memorable? So she says it's very like ego driven. Like a lot of the speakers are just in it to deliver a great speech and, you know, how to hear the crowd and all this stuff. She said that's her least favorite part of all this is the whole ego thing. And she said, yes, she enjoys, you know, the interaction with the crowd, but for her, that's not her number one goal and what drives her to continue in this speaking business. And so back to the topic of work ethic, it's kind of like either you got it or you don't. And what I mean by that is there's so many people that are just wanting this, you know, so fast, whatever your goal is. Let's say you're trying to build an online business. They want results within the first 6 months. They want 10,000 subscribers on their YouTube channel within the first 9 months or the first year of creating it. 99% of the time, that's just not going to happen. Those individuals who have their strong why plus the work ethic are the ones who are going to, you know, come out on top and are going to win in the future, because those first 2 years of entrepreneurship are crazy. They are hard. They are going to require 12-hour working days, sometimes 16, like me. And there's people I know that worked even more than that. Okay, that's kind of extreme for me. Like I worked a lot in the beginning. I worked so many hours. I remember the only time I would go outside, you know, is maybe to eat something really quick, to go work out for an hour. But the rest of the time I was grinding behind my laptop, just trying to figure it out. Most of the time I was failing at things, but I figured it out. And those first 2 years of work on your business are just, it's inexcusable. The hustle, the grind is not excusable. Now there comes a point where once you start to produce a revenue where you're like, okay, I can finally start to breathe a little bit in my business. Okay, because you can't be hustling your whole life, but definitely the point here is that it has to be done within that first year or two. I mean, you just can't be binge watching Netflix anymore. There may require some weekends where you don't go out on the boat on that lake day with people. It's just, it sucks, but it's necessary. And there's been so many people that, for example, a couple of ex-coworkers, or one ex-coworker in particular, a colleague who, you know, they say to me like, oh, Marissa, like, it's so cool that you're doing this entrepreneur thing. Like, I want to invest in real estate. And they're like, yeah, I just want to, you know, start investing and creating more sources of income. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I remember one time this person told me like, hey, make sure you hold me accountable. And I'm thinking, what the fuck? What? Hold you accountable? Like, hell no. I'm like, you hold your own self accountable. Like, there's no one really who can hold themselves more accountable than yourself. And so that's what I have to say about work ethic. All right, so the next biggest factor that I believe, which took Mel Robbins from making $0 to $100,000 an hour with her speaking business, is impact. Oprah says this all the time: when you lead with service, you lead with a heart of wanting to give value, your income is going to go up. You know, nowadays, even, you know, really of all time, the speaking business has been competitive, but she led with a heart of gold and a heart of service and wanting to make a true impact on people's lives. And that's why I strongly believe that she rose to the top and will continue to keep rising and become a bigger and bigger person in the motivational and personal development niche. And so that's why I love YouTube, because YouTube is a platform to make an impact in real people's lives and to actually help them without having to you know, meet them in person. And it's so cool that I'm able to do this and that other creators are able to do this, because you're really helping people out and potentially impacting millions of lives from the comfort of your home or from wherever you are if you're traveling. And that's what's so special about it, is that you are building your legacy, just like Mel Robbins. It isn't just her kids and her husband. Yes, that's a big part of her legacy, but her legacy is every single life that she has touched, right? Every single person that has listened to a motivational speech of hers and has thought, man, that I am freaking inspired. I am motivated. Wow. By the way, if you have been thinking about building a YouTube channel, growing an audience, leveraging the YouTube platform to build your online business, I definitely invite you to download my Subscribers to Sales Blueprint. It'll be up here, but that Subscribers to Sales Blueprint will break down the 6 steps and what you need to make a wildly profitable YouTube channel, make a big impact, and of course, create a lifestyle that you can live on your own terms. And so that's why this platform of YouTube is so easy to leverage and to get started. It's free. It's a tool that's now more accessible than ever to literally start from day one to start creating content and having people view your videos, and you can keep growing and growing and growing as a creator and start helping people and getting out there and solving their problems. And so the next factor that I believe that Mel Robbins really got right in her journey to making $100,000 an hour is with overcoming imposter syndrome. Now, imposter syndrome is something that's always going to be with you. It's the fear of rejection, the fear of failure, the fear of feeling like a fraud, feeling like you're not good enough, feeling like you don't know enough. A lot of you watching this video right now are probably like, yeah, shaking their head like, yeah, I can totally relate. Imposter syndrome in the beginning of your journey looks so different than it does right now, for example, in my journey. So yeah, right now, I still struggle with imposter syndrome all the time because naturally, it's like I want to compare myself to other business owners, like, oh, how much revenue are they producing in their business? And oh, am I good enough to do that? And oh my gosh, so it's like imposter syndrome never goes away. So for example, the students in my Subscribers to Sales program, they have major imposter syndrome when it comes to, for example, talking in front of the camera and starting a YouTube channel, right? Starting a YouTube channel is hard because they think like, oh, who really is going to get some value from what I'm going to teach? Who wants to hear me speak on camera? Like, oh, well, actually, I know my niche is already saturated and there's already hundreds of other channels in my niche. I can never be successful. So it's like all these things are constantly nagging in your brain. And it's crazy how it automatically, our brain, unfortunately, automatically goes to like the worst case scenario instead of going to what if in the best case scenario. My advice for imposter syndrome is you got to just take one action once per day at a time. So taking action on something, anything towards your goal is the number one thing to combat imposter syndrome. Creating that first video, creating that social media profile, hiring your first team member, whatever it is. Those are all things that will, along your journey, help you to overcome the imposter syndrome. And so that's the remedy right there, is just taking action, just doing one thing every single day that might be a little bit uncomfortable. But then the next time you do it, it might be fine. It might be a little less uncomfortable, or it might not be uncomfortable at all. So imposter syndrome is perfectly normal, but don't let it kill your dreams. So if you're still here, let's continue the fun of learning and growing together. Why don't we watch this video coming up next on the 6 steps you need to take to create $200 a day in your online business if you've just quit your 9-to-5. So let's go and watch this video together. We'll see you on that video. No job? Just quit your 9-to-5? Good, because this video is going to explain the 6 steps that you are going to need to make $100 a day, $200 a day,